The Detroit Lions are entering one of the most fascinating and pivotal off-seasons in recent franchise history, and everything starts with a clear identity shift that's quietly forming beneath the surface. When you step back and look at the big picture, this is no longer just a team trying to compete. This is a team trying to sustain contention, and that subtle difference is exactly why the decisions being made right now carry so much long-term weight. The biggest storyline dominating the conversation right now revolves around the trenches, specifically the offensive line, and more precisely, the future at tackle. For years, Detroit built its identity around physical dominance up front, anchored by consistency and veteran leadership. But now, with the departure of longtime left tackle Taylor Decker, the Lions are staring at a reality they haven't faced in nearly a decade. There is a void at one of the most important positions in football, and the entire structure of the offense depends on how they fill it. That's exactly why the mock draft landscape has become so heavily skewed toward offensive tackles. When you look across dozens of projections, the pattern is undeniable. Detroit is being consistently linked to a group of high-upside linemen, and each one represents a different philosophical direction for the franchise. Spencer Fano brings agility and modern pass protection ability, the kind of skill set designed to counter the evolving speed of NFL edge rushers. He fits the mold of a technically refined protector, someone who can keep the pocket clean in a league that increasingly prioritizes quarterback efficiency. But there are questions about how long his projected draft slide will last, and whether Detroit would even have a shot at him when the moment comes. Blake Miller, on the other hand, represents something more stable and immediate. He's rising quickly up draft boards, and for good reason. His size, power, and experience make him one of the safest projections in this class. If the Lions want a plug-and-play solution, someone who can step in from day one and stabilize the offensive line, Miller might be the most logical choice. There's also positional flexibility in play here, especially if Detroit considers shifting Penei Sewell to the left side, which could completely reshape the line structure. Then you have Monroe Freeling, a prospect who embodies upside and projection. He's not the most polished player right now, but the physical tools are undeniable. Elite movement skills, explosive athletic testing, and prototypical size make him one of the most intriguing developmental tackles in the class. If the Lions are truly shifting toward a youth-focused approach, Freeling becomes a very real possibility. This would signal a willingness to invest in long-term growth rather than immediate certainty. Caden Proctor might be the most Lions-like prospect of the group. Massive, powerful, and physically overwhelming. He fits the identity Detroit has built over the past few seasons. There's a reason analysts keep saying he feels like a natural fit. He brings a level of physicality that aligns perfectly with the team's DNA. But with that comes the question of refinement, and whether his game can fully translate at the next level without technical adjustments. And then there's Caleb Lamo, a player who might not have the same level of hype as some of the others, but offers a very balanced profile. He's shown flashes of high-level play, with the potential to develop into a reliable long-term starter. If Detroit is looking for a steady successor rather than a high-risk, high-reward gamble, Lamu could quietly emerge as the pick that makes the most sense. What's fascinating here is that this decision isn't just about replacing a player. It's about defining the next phase of the Lions' offensive identity. Do they prioritize immediate stability, or do they chase long-term upside? Do they lean into power, athleticism, or pass protection? Each option sends a different message about where this team is headed. And while the offensive line is getting most of the attention, there are other needs quietly building in the background. The defensive interior is one of them. On paper, the Lions have solid starters, but depth is becoming a concern. With players departing and others returning from injury, the margin for error is shrinking. A prospect like Peter Woods could provide immediate rotational impact and long-term insurance, but using a first-round pick in that area would signal a very different draft strategy. The edge position is another area that cannot be ignored. Aiden Hutchinson remains the centerpiece of the pass rush, but the lack of a consistent complementary threat has been an ongoing issue. This is where players like Keldrick Falk and Akeem Masitter enter the conversation. Falk offers size, youth, and the traditional traits of a base defensive end, while Masitter brings versatility and a high motor presence that can impact both the pass and the run game. Choosing between them would come down to whether Detroit values long-term development or immediate disruption. Right in the middle of all this draft speculation, there's another storyline developing that could have a major impact on the offense, and it's happening in the backfield. The departure of David Montgomery has completely reshaped the running back room, forcing the Lions to rethink how they distribute touches behind Jahmyr Gibbs. The addition of Isaiah Pacheco gives Detroit a proven option, someone who can step into a significant role right away. But what makes this situation truly interesting is the emergence, or rather the reemergence, of Sione Vaki. General Manager Brad Holmes made it very clear that the team has not given up on Vaki as an offensive contributor. In fact, the way he brought him up unprompted suggests there's genuine belief in his potential. Vaki's journey has been anything but straightforward. Transitioning from a college safety to an NFL running back is already a challenge, and injuries have only made things more difficult. But the flashes are there. His limited opportunities have shown a player with intriguing versatility and athleticism, and now, for the first time, there's a real pathway to meaningful snaps. This is where things get interesting from a strategic standpoint. If Vaki can carve out a role, even as a rotational player, it adds another layer to Detroit's offense. It gives them flexibility, unpredictability, and depth. And in a league where injuries are inevitable, having that kind of internal development could be just as valuable as any external acquisition. If you're enjoying this deep dive into the Detroit Lions' evolving roster and draft strategy, make sure to subscribe to the channel and stay locked in, because as we get closer to the draft, these storylines are only going to get more intense, and you won't want to miss how it all unfolds. Beyond roster construction, there's also a psychological element to consider as the Lions look ahead to the 2026 season. The way last season started still lingers. Opening with a loss to a division rival set a tone that the team never fully shook, even as they recovered with a strong stretch of wins. It's a reminder that in the NFL, momentum matters, and early impressions can shape the narrative of an entire season. That's why the conversation around the 2026 season opener isn't just fan speculation. It's about setting the tone. A favorable matchup at home could provide the kind of confidence boost that carries into the early weeks. On the other hand, a high-profile, high-pressure game could test the team's resilience right out of the gate. The idea of facing a team like the New Orleans Saints in Week 1 highlights a more pragmatic approach. It's not about making a statement. It's about securing a win, building confidence, and establishing rhythm. For a team with playoff aspirations, sometimes the smartest move is the simplest one. All of these elements, the draft decisions, the development of young players, the restructuring of key position groups, and even the choice of opening opponent, are interconnected. They all feed into the same goal, building a team that can not only compete, but sustain success over the course of an entire season and beyond. As the draft approaches and the offseason continues to unfold, the Lions are at a crossroads. The choices they make now will define not just the 2026 season, but the trajectory of the franchise for years to come. This is where contenders separate themselves from pretenders, not on Sundays, but in the decisions made months before the first snap. And if you want to stay ahead of every move, every projection, and every breaking development surrounding the Detroit Lions, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications, because this is just the beginning of what's shaping up to be one of the most important off seasons in team history.